Well, good morning. This is Ian R. Crane, and it's the morning of Friday, 21st of September 2018. And right now it's an absolutely beautiful morning. There's still a bit of wind, but it's only gusting at probably 15 to 20 mile an hour, as opposed to the near hurricane force winds and rain that I think probably swept across the entire north of England yesterday. Well, we seem to be almost intact. Unfortunately, a couple of our gazebos seem to have succumbed, but nothing too serious. Unfortunately, everybody was camped in the caravans or in one of the more solid structures, so everybody's okay. Except for the fact, of course, that yesterday IGAS rolled the first major convoys into the Missing Springs well site. And the police presence was absolutely absurd. At one time, there was 38 police actually at the bellmouth for the 7 protectors that were there. And in addition to that, there was a number of other police vans with the heavies in there. And every vehicle that came in was escorted by a police convoy. So, funnily enough, it was reported at the Missing community meeting earlier in the week that crime seems to be going up in the area. And before anybody starts to say, well, it's due to the dirty hippies on the camp, no, it's not. It's due to the petty criminal community taking advantage of the fact that the police would seem to be otherwise engaged in corporate enforcement. But here's a word of advice for anybody that does suffer from any criminal activity. Of course, if you call 999 and you're experiencing a burglary or a break-in or maybe even something a bit more serious, they are invariably too busy. But of course, if you tell them that whomever has broken in has offended you, then no doubt they will send the flying squad down immediately. So that's clearly the secret, especially if you're the South Yorkshire side of the border here. Then simply phone the police and tell them you're offended, and then you will get the rapid response unit out pretty damn quick. Well, of course, we are now entering the final 5 weeks of the consultation period that the government announced back in July. And this is the consultation to get reactions to the government proposal to make exploration for shale gas, exploratory drilling, permitted development. In other words, basically, the oil and gas companies, once they've acquired access to the land, do not have to then seek any further local authority permission. They simply write a letter to the local authority saying, we've got permission to access the land and we will be drilling here on such and such a date. Well, consider the possibility that there is something a little bit more sinister behind this. Now, the good news is that that in of itself, the supposed permitted development for shale gas exploration, is getting a massive reaction. And I think Greg Clark's strategy is paying off here, because, of course, he does not want to be seen to be the one pulling the plug on an industry that effectively they've been hamstrung with by their predecessors, David Cameron and George Osborne. So what they've done is they've thrown a grenade out into the wider community and said, you know what, unless you guys actually start to take an interest, we're just going to make it permitted development. Well, councils all across the country are discussing this, and invariably the votes are nigh on unanimous. In fact, very few people seem to want to vote against it. There have been a few abstentions, but yesterday evening reports came in that Doncaster Metropolitan Borough Council, they actually voted by 40-0. I think there was one abstention, but 40-0 against the proposals to make exploratory drilling for shale gas permitted development. And then shortly after that, reports came in that Nottinghamshire County Council, which is Tory led, had voted again unanimously to reject the permitted development proposition. Well, that's unanimous for the exploration of shale gas, i.e. drilling a deep borehole. But actually consider the possibility that this is the Trojan horse, and that in reality what is going on here is an attempt to establish permitted development for the disposal of toxic nuclear waste. And I just want to remind people watching this that back in 2015, so some 3.5 years ago, hot on the heels of the Infrastructure Act being passed into law, just before Parliament was about to go into its Easter recess, the announcement was made that the disposal of nuclear waste would actually be classified as a nationally significant infrastructure project and would therefore be removed from the consultation process with local authorities. So that was put out. There were some articles in the national press, and in particular the Guardian, and I've got it right here with me, and the Guardian headline, and this was published online on the Sunday, and I believe it appeared in the print version on the Monday, the 6th of April. And the headline was, "Law changed so nuclear waste dumps can be forced on local communities. Legislation rushed through in the final hours of Parliament allows local planning laws to be bypassed, seriously alarming anti-nuclear campaigners." Now, that is a very, very interesting way of writing the headline, because the whole idea there is for people to read it and then go, "Oh, well, I'm not an anti-nuclear campaigner, so it doesn't affect me." In reality, what they're trying to do here is to literally be able to foist nuclear waste beneath communities without any consultation whatsoever. And the article opens, "Nuclear waste dumps can be imposed on local communities without their support under a new law rushed through in the final hours of Parliament. Under the latest rules, the long search for a place to store Britain's stockpile of 50 years' worth of the most radioactive waste from power stations, weapons and medical use can be ended by bypassing local planning. Since last week," that's back in April 2015, "the sites are now officially considered nationally significant infrastructure projects and so will be chosen by the Secretary of State for Energy. He or she would get advice from the Planning Inspectorate but would not be bound by the recommendation. Local councils and committees can object to details of the development but cannot stop it altogether." So that's 3.5 years ago. So then let's take a look at what's happened more recently. Well, in the interim, and I'm going to link to this PowerPoint presentation, there was a joint presentation made by John Beswick of Marriott Drilling, based down in Chesterfield in Derbyshire, Professor Fergus Gibb and Dr. Carl Travis of the University of Sheffield. And in that presentation, they are making the proposition that the answer to the permanent disposal of highly toxic nuclear waste is to bury it in deep boreholes. Of course, the government had tried to establish a deep geological disposal facility like that built in Onkala, near 250 kilometres northwest of Helsinki. But that was going to be in the Lake District in Allerdale, but Cumbria County Council shut that down before it actually got any real progress. So that's given the government a problem. And of course, the low-level toxic waste is now being dumped, particularly from Hinkley power plants in Somerset, is being transported across the Bristol Channel and dumped off the coast of Penarth. So I think we can pretty much guarantee that we're going to see an increase in leukemia, particularly amongst children in South Wales over the next few years. And obviously the precedent for that is the total lack of children on the island of Alderney in the Channel Islands because of the nuclear waste that was dumped for some 30 odd years in the Herd Deep just to the north of the Channel Islands, which has effectively made the cancer rate spike in those who have the misfortune to live in that area. But the high-level waste, they don't have a solution for. But Professor Fergus Gibb at Sheffield University has been working on this now for nearly 2 decades. And if we look at what's happened this year, if we just go back to July. Now July was when the consultation period for permitted development for shale gas exploration was introduced. But actually, in reality, the government is using this as a Trojan horse to try to establish a basis for getting deep boreholes to dispose of the nuclear waste. And in fact, I think I've got it right here. Yep, on the 31st of July, so this is actually a week after the consultation period commenced, there was a draft national policy statement for geological disposal and the infrastructure related to that. And the Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy Committee published a report on the draft national policy statement for geological disposal infrastructure. And basically in that report, they're looking at 4 crucial areas. Whether or not national parks and areas of outstanding natural beauty could be put to use to bury the toxic nuclear waste. Using geological disposal for new nuclear build activity. The report also discussed the place of local community consent in the process, i.e. none. And here's the big one. How the national policy statement is linked with the industrial strategy to deliver socio-economic benefits to host communities. In other words, basically how much have we got to bribe them to take this waste beneath their community. And then on the 6th of September, so literally just 2 weeks ago, the House of Lords had a committee meeting to discuss the national policy statement for geological disposal infrastructure. And this was chaired by Lord Henley. And basically this is pushing the concept in the Lords. So Lord Henley, interesting guy, he's a hereditary peer, otherwise known as Oliver Michael Robert Eden, the 8th Baron Henley and the 6th Baron Northington. And here's a piece of irony. Lord Henley previously served as Minister of State at the Home Office with responsibility for crime prevention and antisocial behaviour. Well, clearly he hasn't actually made the link here, of course, between antisocial behaviour and a government proposition to quietly bury toxic nuclear waste beneath communities. So in this PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to link beneath this video, Professor Fergus Gibb makes the observation that the entire stock of the UK's highly toxic nuclear waste could be buried in 6 wells, which could take up no bigger than the surface area of a football pitch. The reality, of course, is that isn't going to happen. And what they're looking to, I believe, do, and this is also based on my research and my conversations with those who are tasked with this project at Radioactive Waste Management, and they will spread this across the country. It won't be in just 6 wells. They'll take the opportunity to quietly bury this without any consultation in wells right across the north of England. So if they get a network of exploratory shale gas wells, basically there's going to be a few of those wells where the companies say, oh dear, what a shame, we're not going to get any viable return. So basically the well's going to be abandoned. Well, of course it won't be abandoned. They'll be looking for the ongoing revenue stream that they will get in perpetuity for hosting this nuclear waste disposal. And of course what that will also do is it will spread the cancer clusters. There won't be a cancer cluster in one particular area like we're going to see in South Wales over the next couple of decades, but it will be right across the north of England. And of course there will be therefore the plausible deniability that nothing to do with the nuclear waste disposal. So here's the deal. There's 5 weeks left to get a response in to the consultation on permitted development for shale gas exploration. So here's what people need to do to make sure that this does not escalate into a nuclear waste disposal project. Then stop the wells being drilled in the first place. And by stopping the wells being drilled, then you take away the prospect of this toxic nuclear waste being buried beneath your community. And I'll post the links to everything that I've shared in this morning's video. And I'm just getting the message that there's no sound on I think it's the YouTube camera here, so we'll have to upload it from elsewhere a bit later. So thanks for telling me that, and we'll get it sorted later. Technical issues of live broadcasting. Anyway, that's it for today. Please take a look at this, and obviously there will be those who try to suggest that this is just rampant conspiracy, but I'm going to post the links. You join the dots, and let's make sure that the British government never gets an opportunity to advance this antisocial behaviour by depositing toxic nuclear waste. Right, looks like I've got a little bit of recovery work to do on the camp here this morning, but I'll be back with you on Monday morning, so you have a great weekend, and please try and find an hour or so to do your own research. Thanks a lot, and take care now.